love how the helmsman's just like, well, my job's to steer the ship, not to take that kid down. Hello everyone, welcome to my Avatar The Last Airbender reaction commentary. And the reason I say commentary is because I have watched Avatar before, so this isn't really like a pure blind reaction, but I have watched it plenty of times, so this is more of like a fan commentary, I guess. So if that's your jam, or if that's something you never heard of and you're like, what is this guy doing? Like you're new to the channel. I do Avatar stuff on the channel and I want to do a commentary series and see how it works out. But we're going to be watching the entire series of Avatar The Last Airbender, including Legend of Korra when we get to it. We'll see how it goes, but let's get to it.
Water. Earth. Fire. Air.
So I guess a good opening question for people in the chat while we're watching the intro here. When is the first time that you watched Avatar The Last Airbender? For me, I'm pretty sure I didn't come into it until book 2 or maybe even book 3 when it was on Nickelodeon. So that would have been like, what, 2006, 2007? I was 16, 17 at that time. But yeah, let's do that. Let's like do that as like an answer in the comments below. So I was actually slightly older than the target audience for this, because I believe this was targeted, you know, it's obviously Nickelodeon, which we'll talk about a bit in this first episode, that it's very Nickelodeon in this first season in particular. It feels very kiddie, but then, you know, it turns to be something much more than that.
Why is it that every time you play with magic water, I get soaked?
That's the very interesting thing, is at the beginning they called it magic at the beginning, which I thought was very funny, because that doesn't really show up ever again, because it's not really treated as magic as much as like just something that's part of the world. But I suppose it makes sense coming from Sokka and like the Southern Water Tribe, because waterbending is kind of like a thing that is kind of gone at this point, right? Because, you know, Katara's mom is gone. Although Katara's mom was never a waterbender, she was just trying to protect Katara. Hama's gone. Everybody who was a waterbender has been killed off by the Fire Nation, very similar to what happens to the Air Nomads. But yeah, like this idea that it's magic is actually something that's you don't really hear about much past these first 3 episodes, and I think it's just interesting. I don't know if that's like an intentional thing, because it's like a world building portion where it's like we don't even know what bending is anymore, it's just magic, or if it's a case of like that's what the early writers thought about it, is like a direct magic system, when really it's not.
I knew I should have left you home. Leave it to a girl to screw things up.
And of course, Sokka sexism.
We have to help.
It's funny that Katara says he's alive, because like low-key, Aang kind of looks like a girl if you don't really know that he's a guy. Although I don't really remember the promotions of this show, so I don't know if it was a known factor that Aang was a guy before the show came out. Because in that first image, he looks kind of like a girl. But that's the thing, right? Like before you become the age of like 11, 10, like guys and girls kind of look the same. And the worst haircut award goes to... You know what I always liked about Dante Basco's take on Zuko? It's the little lisp that he has. And I think that works very well for Zuko, because I know some people who watch from other sources, like they watched in Spanish first or German first or whatever. They're like, oh man, the American voices are weird. But it's like, I think everyone's cast very well, especially Zuko, because he's supposed to sound like this gruff kind of like badass, but also he's got this like little lisp, so he's kind of like, you can kind of tell that he's not, you know, a total bad guy.
I need to capture the Avatar.
Stop it.
Like these kind of sound effects is totally Nickelodeon, you know? Like you don't see much of it as much in like Korra and later on in the books. I mean, you have a few sound effects, but not like that. Like that boing, 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 boing is super Nickelodeon to me.
Please, come closer. What is it? Will you go penguin sledding with me?
In retrospect, I would think Aang's reaction would be a little different, because the last memory he has is running away from home and being in a storm, unless he has like slight amnesia or something, which isn't really established. So it's kind of weird that that's his first reaction.
Appa, are you all right? Wake up, buddy.
Also, it's crazy. Did they not know he's an airbender with his tattoos, or has it been such a long time since airbenders have been around that they don't even know that that's a thing? Nickelodeon slime.
Did you see that crazy bolt of light? He was probably trying to signal the Fire Navy.
Like, how ignorant are you, Sokka? He's got an arrow on his head. It's only until this point where they're like, oh, he's an airbender.
You just sneezed and flew 10 feet in the air.
Really? It felt higher than that.
I think I got Midnight Sun Madness.
By the way, Midnight Sun Madness is actually a thing, especially people who live in Alaska and very far north. Because, of course, the way that, the world works, you get a lot of sun and a lot of darkness in the northern hemisphere. So that was a cool little line that they put in there.
Why are you smiling at me like that?
I was.
You know what's funny too? I don't think that was Aang showing that he has a crush. More so that he's really friendly and he's just like seeing people, Especially, we'll talk about that as we go on with the series, but it's kind of inconsistent, his liking of Katara, especially in the Jet episode, where it looks like he doesn't like her at all. Even though Jet's kind of like, all up on his girl.
I guess I was wondering, you're being an airbender and all? If you had any idea what happened to the Avatar.
It's funny she didn't ask, like, do you know where the other airbenders are too? Like that actually doesn't really even come up until they start going to the Southern Air Temple. Because you would think you would want to ask that question, right? Like, oh, and by the way, where are the other airbenders? Wait, so is she just now noticing his arrows? Because, like, you should have already seen those before, right? Like, I don't know.
Aang, this is the entire village. Entire village, Aang.
Now, here's something that I never was really sure of. Are there other smaller villages in the Southern Water Tribe? Or is that supposed to be like, this is the rest of us?
Magic trick, do it again.
Yeah, it's definitely a case of magic is supposed to be like, water bending's magic, air bending's magic. They've seen the Fire Nation, so they know that fire bending's a thing, but it's just funny. I think it's a funny notion that they all think it's magic in the sense of it being like an otherworldly thing rather than something that's a part of their own culture. You know what's funny? I've noticed this a bunch of with Aang. He's really good with kids, which is funny because he's good with kids, and yet Kaya and Bumi, as we'll find out later on, did not feel that way.
The sages tell us that the Avatar is the last airbender. He must be over 100 years old by now.
Another question in the comments. How do you guys feel about the idea that Aang is the last airbender? Like, how in the heck did the Fire Nation kill off every single airbender across the entire world? Because there wasn't just the ones who were closest to them in the Western Air Temple. There was the Southern Air Temple, which we saw they decimated, and Gyatso was there. He got decimated and killed. There was the Eastern Air Temple. There was a Northern Air Temple. So all of that had to be coordinated on Sozin's Comet. But there was also traveling air nomads. So there had to be some that existed. So it's kind of, I don't know. Like, maybe in this new Avatar Studios, we'll get the story about how these other avatars got killed off, but it's like, shouldn't there be a few that are alive? Like, even a few.
I haven't done this since I was a kid. You still are a kid.
I really like that line in particular because it says a lot about Katara, even if you don't really realize it in the moment. But it shows how much she has to have grown up and how she does not feel like a kid anymore. And Aang is good for her because he's showing her that you still can be a youngster.
Do I look like a 112-year-old man to you?
Think about it. The war is a century old. You don't know about it because you were in there that whole time. It's the only
It's like time traveling almost, like, dang. By the way, I have my Fire Nation top knot on if anybody can see it. Thought it might have been appropriate.
I think it best if the airbender leaves.
Fine. Then I'm banished too. Come on, Aang, let's go.
Where do you think you're going?
You know what? This is kind of messed up, knowing that this guy is the last airbender. Y'all about to let him just fend for himself?
Katara, I don't want to come between you and your family.
I'm actually glad that Aang's the one who makes that decision, because Katara would low-key be stubborn enough to actually go. And he's like, nah. And this is a cool way of showing how good of a person Aang is.
Guess I'll go back home and look for the airbenders. Wow, I haven't cleaned my room in 100 years. Not looking forward to that.
I'm surprised he's not thinking like, yo, Gyatso's probably dead. Like, I don't think people really live to be at 200 because Kyoshi was an anomaly. And we know the reason why she lived so long. If you guys read the book, by the way, read The Rise of Kyoshi. But it's like, shouldn't Aang be like, oh wait, my friends are probably dead? I really like that Avatar is kind of like a pan-Asian kind of tale, because yeah, there is some influences, like direct influences, like obviously the Northern Water Tribe is very Inuit. Fire Nation is very similar to the empires of China, Japan, Korea, that sort of stuff. Of course, the Earth Kingdom is really represented by, like, you know, the mainland of the Asian continent. But really, honestly, it really adapts from everything, and no one culture is exactly alike to any like real world culture. And I always appreciate that about the show. This theme music sounds a little bit like it's like a cartoon from the 80s. By the way, Zuko's strength is kind of insane. There's going to be a part in book 2, or is it book 1? Book 2, I think, where he smashes a chain with his heel, and now he cracks. I mean, granted, I know it's supposed to be like a whalebone, it's supposed to be a weak weapon, but he breaks it with his freaking arms. Like, this world's kind of weird in that regard, how it's like people are super powerful in ways, like superhuman powerful.
Hey, Katara. Hey, Sokka.
Hi, Aang. Thanks for coming.
Rude, Sokka.
If I go with you, will you promise to leave everyone alone?
And this is the moment that Aang becomes a likable hero. He stops fighting when other people can get hurt. And I think that, like, right there is a great establishment for his character. And just also just as a hero in general, because like I've been saying before, like, you know, I feel like in today's society, we're very obsessed with like black, or not black and white, but with the gray characters, and everybody needs to be a gray character, and everything needs to be kind of like, you know, nebulous. But, you know, there used to be a time where people just were just good, you know what I mean? I appreciate that about Aang, especially all the way up until the end of the series, where that character trait holds over all the way into the end.
Get in. We're going to save your boyfriend.
He's not my...
Whatever.
It's so funny how inconsistent they are with the Katara Aang stuff. Because, yeah, it starts off early, like right now. But then, like I said again, the Jet episode doesn't seem like it's really there. Oh, and then it comes up again with the fortune teller. So, yeah, it's always like it goes in and out, like them being into each other and not into each other.
And take this to my quarters.
Hey, you mind taking this to his quarters for me?
It's like the slow establishment that Iroh is freaking legendary. He's such a funny character. But he's polite about it. He said, would you mind taking this to the quarters for me?
I guess you've never fought an airbender before. I bet I could take you both with my hands tied behind my back.
You can. Aang has some pretty cool bending, I gotta admit. He's got some cool bending sometimes.
Up. Ascend. Elevate.
Sokka doesn't believe you can fly.
There's actually some weird audio mixing because they make it sound like they're like in a big cave or something.
Sorry.
Such a cute moment. I kind of wish that Aang and Iroh had more scenes together. They barely really talk to each other, even though they're very similar.
Looks like I underestimated you.
This is one of my favorite fight scenes right here. It's just so cool how like Aang dodges, especially when he like gets to Zuko's back and is like twirling around. I think it's really dope. And also just showing the different styles, you know, different mentalities in their fighting styles. And pulling out to the wide shots to see the flaring in the windows. Really good touch, good touch. And of course, that is actually one of Aang's invention. The air scooter is what he invented. I believe, right? If I'm mistaken? Yeah, he totally invented the air scooter. Like I'm saying, like how are these people still alive when they get snapped like that? Like the people in this world are superhuman. They're destroying bone spears, they're breaking chains with their heels, getting smacked into steel walls and walking it off like it's nothing. I love how the helmsman's just like, well, my job's to steer the ship, not to take that kid down. Imagine at that point, he just turns into an iceberg again and goes like, you know what? I'm gonna peace out for another 100 years. Nah, but the past lives are like, nah, we can't do that again. That would be very interesting if maybe like the past lives are trying to communicate, hey, you need to wake up. Like, did they try waking up for like 100 years? Or were all the avatars basically in stasis while he was in an iceberg? Very interesting, I don't know. that technically should be advanced water bending. It's one thing to like throw some waves around, but to like make ice, that should be complicated. But again, we don't really know the rules of the magic system yet. Plus, it never really established the difficulty of freezing water. But in my mind, it should be harder to freeze water than it's showcased in the early versions of the show, especially with Katara. But then again, I think Katara progresses way too quickly with her water bending in general.
How did you do that? With the water?
Ah, and the beautiful music. It's very funny because like almost all the episodes in book 1 end with them flying away on Appa.
Why didn't you tell us you were the
Oh, very good that they had the cloud going over. I never really actually noticed that before. But then showing the hope with the light. Oh.
According to legend, you need to first master water, then earth, then fire, right?
That's what the monks told me.
Well,
Did they
if we
really
go to the
maintain
next
that? Because you don't really have to learn in that order anymore, do you?
We can learn it together.
Although I think Korra actually learned that order as well, huh? And so did Roku. Kyoshi didn't learn that order. I don't think. All right, so that's gonna end our first episode, or our first batch of episodes for Avatar: The Last Airbender. Let me know what you guys think about this format, or if there's other things you guys want me to talk about. Maybe we'll have like a questionnaire at the end of every one of these episodes, so I have maybe topics that you guys want me to talk about in the episode. I try to talk about as much as I could with regards to how I feel about the episodes, kind of like the behind the scenes, how I felt that it worked out for the series itself. But again, I think it probably, at the beginning, we're gonna try and figure out how this format will work, or if it even will work. But let me know, of course, in the comments below what you guys think of these first 2 episodes and this first kind of commentary, fan commentary, I guess we'll call it, for these episodes. I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace, love, and remember, be water, my friends.